I'm humbled to share the stage with these incredible survivors, and I'm hopeful that our collective voices can help address this issue. Many of you might first associate me with being a professional tennis player, which of course is my day job, but is not the sum of who I am. I'm a daughter, a sister, a wife, and I am more than an athlete, more than a label. Yet all of that is disregarded when people online seek
to harass me and harm me. No matter whether I win or lose, someone online is mad and they will make it known. There have been times when I'm speak today. I'm humbled to share the stage with these incredible survivors, and I'm hopeful that our collective voices can help address this issue. Many of you might first associate me with being a professional tennis player, which of course is my day job, but is not the sum of who I am. I'm a daughter, a sister, a wife, and I am more than an athlete, more than a label. Yet all of that is disregarded when people online seek to harass me and harm me. No matter whether I win or lose, someone online is mad and they will make it known. There have been times when I'm walking off the court after a loss and not even thinking about anything related to tennis, and I'm just worried to see what will be on the other end of my phone because I know what will be waiting for me when I unlock it. People know where I live and everything that I do. I have been harassed and very credibly threatened. I understand that I'm a public figure, so this comes with the scope of my work. But that access and exposure should never come at the expense of my safety. It is so triggering to constantly advocate for myself and relive the trauma of these messages while knowing I'm getting more messages because I'm speaking up. No matter the emojis I block or the filters I put in place, I've learned that if someone is determined to be abusive and threatening, they will get very creative. But I love social media. I love being online. And I use these platforms every day to keep up with my loved ones and have direct dialogue with my community. I'm constantly sharing memes and posts with my friends. And in that same inbox, there are people threatening to harm me. When I went public with my experience after last year's US Open, I was shocked by the outrage and the outpouring of support. It was baffling to me because this has been my daily lived experience for over a decade. Out of sheer survival, I've spent my career trying to desensitize myself on how unacceptable this is, escalating to authorities when credible, and constantly in therapy to process. But then I thought about all the people out there who don't have a team filtering their messages or a direct line to law enforcement or access to mental health services. What about them? What about the young boys and girls and people of color, or anyone that's terrified that they will be harmed or are driven to harm themselves? I'm here today for them. I use my platform to have direct conversations with tech companies, fellow athletes, and anyone who thought I might have some power to influence the situation. This is how I arrived today here at the White House. I hope that by hearing these stories and bringing decision makers together, we can make a difference for everyone, no matter the size of their platform. It is now my pleasure to introduce someone who inspires and motivates me as a Black woman, an advocate, and a trailblazer, someone who has dedicated her entire career to fighting for survivors of abuse and led the way in shining a light on cyber exploitation years before it was even an issue in the public's radar. The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for all you have done and continue to do.
Hi. How are you? Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll take my stuff. Please have a seat. Hi, everyone. Well, let me start by saying it is so good to be with our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, and Gender Policy Council, where is she? Director Jennifer Klein, and all the members of the task force. Thank you all for the work you do, for the extraordinary work that you do. Sloan, thank you for your courage. It takes a lot to put yourself out there as a public figure, period, but then to speak out about something so many people, regardless of gender, are experiencing. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you. And to all the other survivors who are here today, you motivate us, you inspire us, and you are the voice of so many people who are in this room because of the voice that you express around these issues. And so I thank you for that and your strength and your sense of purpose. And in particular, I also want to acknowledge Matthew and Francesca. So I know it is not easy to talk about what you've experienced. And as all of you know, most of my career I spent it as a prosecutor. And the majority of that time I was focused on crimes affecting women and children, crimes that involved sexual abuse, and And in many of the cases, in particular when they were going to trial and we were prepared to go to trial, I'd sit down for extensive periods of time to talk with the survivors about their case and talk with them about what it would be like when they were going to walk out of my office and walk down the hall and walk into a courtroom. And for some, as you all know, it was impossible to imagine what it would mean to speak publicly about what they'd been through when, most don't want to even speak about it in private. But every time, I have to tell you, I was inspired by their bravery for so many reasons, both because of the courage it takes to tell a story that is informed by some of the most horrible experiences, but also informed by such pain. But I was also inspired because, again, the courage that it takes to be that voice. When I would prosecute a case, and the prosecutors here know that, it was I would stand in front of the jury and I would say, Kamala Harris for the people. And the charging document would not be the name of the victim or survivor versus the defendant. It was the people versus. Because you see, in our form of justice, we have rightly said that individual should not be made to fight alone. A harm against her, against him, against them is a harm against all of us as a society. And so it is with that spirit that we are doing the work we are doing today to convene and to inaugurate this task force. Understanding this affects all of us if it affects any one of us. And we, therefore, all of us have a responsibility to stand together, to support those who have gone through this, but to also recognize they shouldn't have to be alone fighting on this issue. So that's the spirit with which we convene today and the spirit with which we are doing this work. And I will tell you, as Attorney General, many of you know when I was in California, I prosecuted the first case in the country of an operator of a cyber exploitation website. And I'll never forget, my office was mostly in Sacramento and we were dealing with a case, if you know, California, in another part of the state. And I flew down to meet with the person who was actually handling the case went through the files to see where were we, what was going on, what we're going to do about this case. Because it was, in many ways, a case of first impression, although it wasn't when we thought about the pathology of what was at play. When we thought about we call it the MO, modus operandi, right? When we talked about and thought about how it was being done, what was motivating it, and how it was making that victim and that survivor feel. So yes, it was the first in the nation, but we'd seen that kind of stuff before. The point was that we needed to update and upgrade ourselves as law enforcement and as the criminal justice system, as a justice system, to recognize where it is now occurring and update our approach to deal with it in all places where it exists in a way that causes harm and pain and injury. And so that website in particular, what it did is it let people upload sexually explicit photographs of their former partners, the photographs that were taken and shared with consent in a consensual relationship. But of course, what ended up happening is that one of those partners, usually in that relationship, had a grudge or an issue or a motivation to embarrass or to harm, and would allow the photograph to be posted with the explicit intent, certainly with the implicit effect, of trying to embarrass and degrade and hurt and cause pain and attract judgment to that individual. Well, in that case, I'm happy to report that the person who ran that website went to prison, because I do believe that there should be consequence for behaviors that harm other human beings. But this kind of justice is still so rare because many of our laws have not caught up with the advances in technology. So as a United States Senator, I introduced legislation to make these acts a federal crime. And thanks to the recent, and our president, Joe Biden, and the recent reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, for the first time, cyber exploitation victims can sue their abusers in federal civil court. And this is progress. Yet, we still have so much more work to do to protect people from online harassment and abuse, which is why the work of this task force is so important. Context. Well, the internet is an essential part of life in the 21st century. Can't get around it. Can't get around without it. And for far too many people, and Sloan told her story, the internet is a place of fear. 1 in 3 women under the age of 35 report being sexually harassed online. Over half of the LGBTQ plus people in our country are survivors of severe harassment. Nearly 1 in 4 Asian Americans report being called an offensive name, usually motivated by racism, being called an offensive name online. And Black people who have been harassed online in our country are 3 times more likely to be targeted, again, because of their race. No one should have to endure abuse just because they are attempting to participate in society. Of course, the impact of this abuse extends beyond the ability to use the internet system and the power of the internet without fear. It's beyond that. In many cases, cyberstalking have serious mental health consequences for its victims, sometimes leading to self-harm, sometimes leading to suicide. And we continue to see how some acts of mass violence, the most recent included, have followed expressions of online hate and abuse. The white supremacist who murdered 10 Black people in Buffalo, New York. Think about that. A woman's location history through a data broker. This is a realistic scenario. If that history shows that she sought an abortion out of state, he could then turn it over to law enforcement in a jurisdiction that has deemed that a crime. This is a horrifying possibility for that woman. So let us be clear. No one should be afraid that an abuser will use their private personal data, or that a person's private personal data will be used against them. And all people deserve to use the advocates in this space for so long, law enforcement and the tech sector, to respond to the task at hand with a sense of urgency.
Yeah. Whereas like Red Pill is all like, here's how to, get like, whatever fucking muscle group they want you to get now, and like all the supplements and shit. Like it runs on an economy of tricking people into like doing stuff that they don't necessarily need to do, beyond just basic fitness. But
Right.
when I think about like the Black Pill folks, I worry about them in particular because like that is kind of what's at the bottom of this funnel, right? Like if you do the Red Pill pipeline long enough and it doesn't work for you because all that shit's nonsense, right? Most of it, like there are going to be some dudes that have success because they're just naturally like monsters and are good at doing that kind of thing. But for most people, that's just, they're going to ping pong around that funnel until they eventually, either find themselves in a relationship that they can sustain, or they wind up at like this abyss of just, there's nothing left. And that to me is like the most dangerous thing. And I wonder how do we reach those people? Can those people be reached? Or is it better to just try to prevent people from hitting that point? I'm not sure where I land on that.
Yeah, it is the scariest point because like incel spree shooters have all their manifestos have Black Pill shit in them. It's all, this is the way things are. This is immutable. My inability to procreate is genetic, which is very funny if you think about the implications of that. But like it's scary. But I don't know. I don't know what the best way to go about it is. I think like I think, like you said, building the scaffolding up, making it so that there's resources along the way to hopefully grab them out of it. I'm interested in revisiting the black pill. I have a couple like early scripts about revisiting it, because maybe what's needed is someone to like just reach all the way down and make like a comprehensive like fail-safe resource for literally to like potentially prevent mass shootings, to say like, all right, black pillars, this is a video dedicated for you and only you, and I want you to stick around with me because I'm going to try and be respectful. I know things are shitty, but maybe we can make it out of here, and maybe we can like, I mean, there's already content out there like that, like not specifically that, but I mean, I'm interested in doing that because it's like, yeah, if some wild shit's going to go down, it's going to be from that space of people that like feel like their backs are like fully against the wall. Like there's no hope, because when you have no hope, what's the point of living? What's the point of, especially when you're in an area that's fostering like horribly negative attitudes towards women, like the violence is just around the corner. That's like just the equation, you know, no hope for you for procreating plus it's women's fault equals violence against women. That's just how, that's just what is inevitable. And it's just a matter of how many people are feeling that way and how many are, you know, willing to take it violent. And so, yeah, it's a really good question to think about, like what we should focus our resources on. But I think people doing what they do and doing what they do best is going to, and like being in conversation with other people about like masculinity and how we can approach this, like things like this, like just now talking about it and helping kind of map out where we need people doing what they do best. Like, I think that's really good. And so, yeah, there's no one easy answer, but I think that's a part of the fun of the challenge. I don't know, something like that.